The ultimate showdown, houses versus storage. In this video, I'm going to share with you which is the better asset class and why. But before I do that, let me share with you a super quick story. I got started in real estate as a single family wholesaler and flipper in 2005. And after about 14, almost 15 years of doing that, I decided to shut down a profitable business, a business that was generating hundreds of thousands of dollars, and a business in which we had closed north of 750 transactions over that time span. And I decided to make that decision right before COVID for a very specific reason. There was actually several reasons. And I'm going to share with you in this video why I ultimately decided to shut down a profitable single family wholesaling business. So with that being said, you might be wondering and ask, like, why did you decide to do that? And what did you end up doing? Well, I ended up transitioning and focusing 100% of my attention on the self-storage asset class. And I believe storage is the best asset class within real estate. And at the end of this video, I think you might agree with me. So with that being said, why did I shut down this business? So one thing that I realized about single family and about wholesaling and flipping is that it was a very transactional business. And while it's a great business to get started because you can generate a lot of cash and the barriers to entry are pretty low, it felt like a rat race. It felt like a high paying job. So while I was making a lot of money, I was being taxed at the highest tax bracket and I was starting the month from scratch. I was starting from zero every single month. Maybe you can relate. And that no longer aligned with my goals and my vision. In addition, I specifically remember I was on a cruise with my wife in 2017 and I couldn't turn my brain off because there were so many things happening back home where business was taking place and deals were falling through. And ultimately I looked at her and I said, all this for what? Like, yes, it's provided for us, but where's the cash flow? And so what I ultimately realized is that while I was running a successful wholesaling business, it was transaction based and there was no recurring income. There was no recurring revenue. So I started buying a rental portfolio, right? I started building a rental portfolio in Cleveland and I fell victim to the myth that being a landlord is passive. And I'm here to tell you that being a landlord is nothing but passive. It's the complete opposite. And we had work order requests and we had to make units rent ready and we had to replace roofs and furnaces and boilers and all this stuff that at the end of the day wiped out the cash flow that we had generated for the year. So single family rentals might generate 100, 150, 200, 300, 400, maybe $500 a month or more. But at the end of the day, when you have a work order and you have a big CapEx, what's called capital expenditures, it can wipe out a majority of the cash flow. So what I ultimately ended up realizing is that, in my opinion, building a rental portfolio is more about equity and less about cash flow. It's about the appreciation that you can build over time. And when you end up dispositioning those assets, selling those assets, and you receive your equity, then now you have capital. You have money to go invest into larger assets that can provide cash flow. So ultimately, I ended up transitioning and focusing on self-storage at the end of 2020. And I just finished selling 80,000 square feet of storage in which we made the amount of money that would have been equivalent to doing 20, 30 single family wholesale deals in just one transaction. And so I'm about to share with you now why I believe storage is the best asset class. And I'm about to fire up my iPad here because there's a few things I want to show you that I think may really open your eyes to what the storage business can do for you. And I want to go ahead and start there while I'm firing this up, is that self-storage is a business, but the beauty of it is that it has the benefits of real estate, right? When I was running my single family business, it wasn't a business that can be sold. Yes, I had processes and systems and I had the right team members in the right seats, like Jim Collins from Good to Great talks about. But at the end of the day, it wasn't a business that could be exited. I didn't build it in a way to sell. In fact, I think it's extremely challenging to take a single family transactional business and be able to sell that business. I don't know very many people that have. However, within my first couple of years of storage, I was able to buy, stabilize storage, and sell for a significant profit. So real estate mogul philanthropist Sam Zell says self-storage is the only real estate asset class that performs well in good times and in bad. And when I started to really research the different asset classes within real estate, this was one of the things that kept coming up over and over again, is that storage is the most recession resistant of all the asset classes. If we're booming and the economy's doing amazing, people are consuming. Think about the Americans and the consumerism and the society that we live in. People are constantly buying things. I don't know if you're anything like me, but like my wife constantly has Amazon packages coming at our door. And so we're constantly buying stuff, and quite honestly, stuff we don't need, if we're being honest with each other. And people need a place to store those things. Now, think about the inverse. When the economy isn't doing well, what do people tend to do? They tend to contract, they tend to downsize. However, they don't want to get rid of their stuff. And so they go rent storage. And so one of the great things about storage, and I'm going to come back to it, is it's a very sticky product. When people move into storage, generally speaking, they stay for years. On average, customers at our storage facility stay and rent for about 3 years. And what does that mean? That means consistent, predictable cash flow, month in and month out. And so storage is just a very, very sticky product, right? Think about the time, energy, and effort that it would take you to move your contents into a 10 by 20 unit. And then think about the effort to move that stuff out, right? Once you move in, you're going to have to, now if you want to move out, you got to get a truck or a pickup or a U-Haul. You got to bother friends and family or hire a moving company, not to mention the weekend that you're probably going to burn just going in there, taking all the stuff out. I mean, the pain of disconnect is really, really high. And so I love the fact that storage is not only a product that's needed and necessary in our country, but it's a very sticky product, as demonstrated here by this little girl. Also, we don't have to deal with this. When I had the single family rental portfolio, oftentimes tenants would destroy things. And then you had to go in there and you had to take the cash flow that you've earned, if you've earned cash flow, and you got to put it back into the property, right? With storage, what are we talking about? We're talking about oftentimes concrete block buildings, metal garage doors, and we're just talking about 3 walls and a door, right? There's not much to it. And so when it comes to renovations, when it comes to having to do rehabs, it's pretty simple. There's not a whole lot to it. We're not dealing with kitchens. We're not dealing with toilets. So speaking of toilets, another reason I love self-storage is, while this is a nasty image, we're not dealing with tenants and toilets and trash. We don't have to call the plumber in the middle of the night, right? One of the things I realized about being a landlord is that it was anything but passive, right? And people always say owning rental properties is passive. Well, there's not very many things that are passive, but I think what I will tell you is that self-storage can be very semi-passive, right? Because of technology, we are able to automate the majority of this business. So when our customers want to rent units, they rent them online on their iPhone or on their smartphone, and they get text to gate code, and the lock is waiting for them there in their unit. When they don't pay, the gate code automatically shuts them out of our facility. So we get the benefit of being able to automate a large part of the self-storage business, which we couldn't do in the single family space. We also don't have to deal with evictions, right? If you own a rental property and one of your tenants doesn't pay, guess what? Now you have to file an eviction, and you have to go through the lengthy and sometimes costly process of getting that person out. And by the way, what do you think is going to happen to that rental property when they're on their way out? You think they're going to take care of it? Oftentimes they're not, at least in my experience. Well, with storage, we don't have to file eviction notices, because in storage, there's something called lien laws. Depending on where the facility is located, in which state, generally speaking, within 60 to 70 days, I would probably say on average, again, depending on the state, as long as we dot our I's and cross our T's, as long as we follow a certain process, we're in, and we've given that customer notification, and we've reached out to them, and we've given them ample opportunity to pay and get current. If that doesn't happen within a certain amount of time, again, generally speaking, let's say 2, maybe 3 months max, we are able to take pictures of the contents of the unit, put it online, sell the contents, recoup a little bit of that money, and then get that unit back online ready to rent. Because the most expensive thing in storage is a vacant unit. A vacant unit means that you're not generating any revenue. And so I love the fact that in storage, if someone doesn't pay, number one, they get locked out of the gate. They don't have access to their contents. And if they don't get caught up, then within a certain amount of time, we're able to auction off the contents of the unit, make some money, generate some revenue, and then get that unit back online within a matter of a day or two. Um, by the way, in self-storage, there's something called late fees, and you have tenant protection, and you have admin fees and lock fees. And so there's a lot of built-in profit centers into storage that single family could never have, right? And so those are just some of the few reasons that I love storage, but I want to come back here and highlight a few more, right? So we talked about the fact that storage is a very recession-resistant asset class. It's also got a very low default rate, right? You don't see very many self-storage facilities get foreclosed on, come up for auction. Part of the reason is because the operating expenses in storage are generally speaking 30 to 40%, right? If you were to compare that to multifamily, for example, where the operating expenses are 45 to 55%. In other words, there's bigger margins in storage, right? It's a very forgiving asset class. I have seen storage operators do everything wrong, but because they bought it right, they still cash flowed and made significant profit whenever they sold. I also love the fact that storage is very simple to manage, right? Up until 3 months ago, I owned 104,000 net rentable square feet, and I might spend an hour to 2 hours a week on that portfolio. And that's because we have third-party management in place. We have a reliable boots on the ground person that goes to the facility once a week, does lock audits and unit cleanouts. And it's an independent contractor. We're not dealing with any employees. When I ran my wholesaling operation, our overhead was between $40,000 and $44,000 a month. And we had the office, and we had marketing, and we had team members. And I would have to close 2 deals a month just to break even. Where in storage, I can have a large portfolio, I can have all these units, and I don't have any employees, right? And I have time freedom, and you can have financial freedom. Um, a few more things, and we're going to start to wind down, but this is just one of many videos I'm going to share about why self-storage is the best asset class and why you need to get involved. In storage, we get to do something called forced appreciation, meaning that when we're able to raise the rents or we're able to introduce certain fees to generate more revenue, we force the appreciation because the value in commercial real estate, and storage is a part of commercial, the value is based on the income that that asset produces, what's called the net operating income. So as a result, if we can increase the net operating income, it has a multiple effect on the value of that facility. I'm not dealing with nearly as much competition as what I dealt with in the single family space. I remember whenever we would do direct mail campaigns to single family homeowners, it was not uncommon for them to have 20 to 30 direct mail pieces at the kitchen counter. And by the way, they said very similar things like, we buy cash and no closing cost and no realtor commissions, and we can close in 3 days, and all the same jargon and copy that people would use. Well, we're not dealing with that with self-storage. So those are just a few of the reasons that I'm so bullish on the self-storage asset class. And I can tell you, after being a single family investor and a wholesaler and a fix and flipper and rehabber for almost 15 years, doing almost or north of 750 transactions, and now having been in self-storage for the last 4+ years, it's a complete game changer. And the best part is that anybody can do this business. Anybody can do this business if they're willing to put the time, energy, and attention to it. And there's a lot of different ways you can get involved. So I want you to go ahead and click on one of the videos up here where you can learn more about self-storage, and we can dive deeper.